all soaking wet. I've been put in the order for this shit. Look at this shit. Shit broke my fan. The fan blew out. Look at this shit. Look at this ghetto shit. Look at this shit. Look, been called for this. This shit is in the books. I called for this shit. And look at this. Pouring in the inside of the house. You know what that shit is, Data?
This is ghetto. I like ghetto shit, but not this shit. This shit is corny ghetto.
Have you ever lived in a project house before? If your answer is yes, what was the experience like? How did people treat you when you told them you were living in a project house? If your answer is no, that you've never lived in a project house before, how did you perceive people that lived in a project house? Or how do you perceive people that live in a project house? Let's talk about it.
I love this video because there absolutely is a stigma attached to growing up in public housing. As someone who did herself, I actually grew up in the same apartment in Manhattan Projects that my dad grew up in. And so growing up, our apartment is where all of our family would get together for holidays. All of our cousins we would have like cousin hangouts, and our aunts and uncles would all go to my aunt's house, and we play on the terrace, playing red light, green light, and playing in the snow. It was just so much fun. And I also was pretty sheltered because my dad grew up in that neighborhood. Everybody knew him. If I stepped outside, I was Bugs kid, because we all had the same face. And so I would never downplay, how difficult it can be to live in public housing. But I think that that's more a reflection of how underfunded and under-resourced it is, and not a reflection of the people who live there. But also shout out to Mariah. We went to high school together, but haven't been in contact since. But I do love her page talking about history and culture in New York City. And y'all should definitely check out more of her videos.
Okay, I'm going to say this in the humblest way possible. No, not. But I'm going to try to. You got people like that live in the projects, and you got people that live in the projects. If you get what I'm saying, like you got project and you got women that just reside in the projects. I've been seeing these sugar rice people, Nay and V and Nay, I think that's their names, all on my For You page, and I don't want to see them. Them two is the definition of project. It just gives ghetto all the time. It's like y'all don't let up. It's like y'all just content with just being viewed as ghetto ass projects, and I never understood why. Like, I've never understood why. That is like, okay, I'm gonna give myself an example. I live in the projects, but I'm not a project. I come in and out my building. I mind my business. I keep it cutesy. I dress up cute. I go outside. I come back in. I don't be screaming and hollering and acting a fool in the projects. I don't business projects. I don't fraternize in the projects. I just live here. Okay? Please stop. Please. I need them off my For You page. Pronto.
There is this stereotype that people have for people living in projects. Some people would say project is ghetto. They associate projects to crime, criminal activities, hood activities and all that. But is that really the case? Some people think if you live in the project, you're poor, you're below a certain income level. But is that really the case? Let's see what people are saying in the comment section. I grew up in New York City projects. My parents always told me and my siblings, when you walk out this house, you don't have to act like where you're coming from. This comment clearly shows how some people treat people that say they live in a project. To some people, once you tell them you live in projects, they automatically see you as a pauper, as someone that has no money, as someone that is into crime. The projects are a place to live. They don't have to be a mentality. We all know people who live in the projects who are hardworking and take pride in their apartment and appearance. My mom always said the projects are just an opportunity for cheap rent, not a lifestyle.
So I'm walking to school and I'm just thinking, like, why don't I do living in the projects, aka the P's, facts, and what I go through on a day-to-day basis, because it's real ghetto out here. So fact number one, any time, any day, any hour, any week, any month, there's always somebody outside. Always, the block is never, there's never a dull moment on the block. Every time you go outside, there's somebody outside on the benches smoking a blunt. Something is always active on the block. Fact number two, the elevator is always going to be a bathroom in this type of lifestyle. The staircase is another bathroom in this type of lifestyle. Fact number three, am I on three? These walls is paper thin. You forever going to hit somebody arguing. I don't even know what I'm on, but whatever. The ops, aka the police, always outside, always. It's giving real nosy, it's giving feds. Now if you like me and you live by a highway, there's always an accident, God bless their soul. Every Friday and Saturday, trust and believe, you're gonna hear the motorcycle. Car, motorcycle, a damn bus, a truck, you're gonna hear it. Another fact, your ox is your best friend. Another fact, you know everybody on the block, especially if you've been there for a long time like me, 15 years, you gonna know everybody. Another fact, there's always a mom of the block. Now what I mean by that, there's always a person, a female, a lady that lived on the block more than anybody. She run the block, she know everybody. Everybody has mad respect for her. She's the mom of the block. Another fact, you gotta pray to the Lord Jesus Christ that the elevators is working, because walking up flights of stairs just never gave. Like for person.
Yes, I feel you, but unfortunately, when you live in the project, people on the other side will group everyone in the same category. I lived in the project from 2006 to 2018. I had a studio, no kids, single, and only interacted with the elderly. I didn't receive assistance. I paid based on income. I used to live in the project and moved into another one unknowingly. It's a complex. I don't hang out anywhere outside, nor do my child. It's ghetto. I'm getting ready to move.
There's so much stigma associated with public housing. Growing up in the projects isn't easy. It's a tough environment. It certainly doesn't help when residents are made to feel shameful or embarrassed of their homes. For 500,000 New Yorkers, NYCHA is just that, a home. Yeah, these buildings are chronically underfunded and maintain a different reality than the gentrified blocks that surround them. But within these brick walls, you'll also find resiliency, love, music, culture. As an adult, I no longer choose to carry the shame I once had as a child. When I visit home, I feel comfort in my community, knowing it's made me who I am today. So yes, I'm hella proud to be from where I am. And for those trying to make it by in New York City, I'm proud of you too.
I grew up in the same apartment as my mom grew up in. I'm so glad I'm not the only one who feels this way. There can be real sense of community in the projects.
So I moved out on my own over 3 years ago, and I lived in the projects for a total of 25 years. And the one aspect that I miss the most is community. I come into my building, no one says hello, no one says good morning, no one says good afternoon, how's it going? The only person that I speak to in the building that I live in is my neighbor, who is an older Caucasian lady who's very sweet. When I moved here, my mom made me knock on her door and introduce myself and let her know that I was going to be her new neighbor. And I'm so glad that she did that, because it's all about community. But I'm really missing that here. I don't really see people engaging with each other, asking about their day, how their family is. And growing up in the neighborhood that I did, that's exactly what would happen. Every single day, you bump into either friends of yours, relatives that live in the area, or just people that you grew up with. And every time that I go back, I was there from Thursday through last night. I slept over at my mom's house, and it was the best. I saw some of my friends, I saw my godmother, I knocked on her door, and it's it feels like a warm hug anytime that I'm back in the hood, in my hood. And it's just so crazy that there's so many stereotypes about living in the projects and housing, and it being so dangerous and so sketchy, and that nothing good comes out of the projects. But isn't that the case for every neighborhood in the world? There's pros and cons to every single place on this planet. There's violence, there is crime that happens in predominantly white neighborhoods too. So I don't really understand where this narrative comes from, because at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway for me is love, respect, and loyalty. And anytime that I'm back, it's like I never left, and it'll always be home to me. It doesn't matter where I end up living next. The Lower East Side, those housing projects, they are as much as I am. I can't even comprehend. So when I come back and I come to my building, and I live on the Upper East Side now, and it's a nice area, very close to my office. I wanted to move out on my own before I got married and have that experience, and I'm glad that I did. But I'm definitely missing the hood love, because there's nothing like it. And just going back and seeing everyone and asking how their lives are going, and it's just a warm feeling. And I want to know, if you are someone that grew up in housing and you moved out, or you still have family that lives there, how do you feel anytime that you're back in your old hood? How do you feel anytime that you're visiting family members that still live in the housing projects? For me, it's one of the most underrated feelings. And it makes me feel that even though I appreciated it while I was living there, you sometimes don't appreciate something as much until you don't have it anymore. So I don't know, I'm just feeling really nostalgic. And after spending a few days there and talking about my story these last couple of weeks, that really has resonated with me. And it's been in the back of my mind of how much I miss that feeling of togetherness and hominess, and knowing every single person almost. When you get out the train station, or you're just walking around, seeing all those familiar faces, even if you don't converse with each other, there's just that understanding there. And even as someone holding the door for you, right? People in the projects, they will wait. They're not in a rush. They don't care. If you have to wait a couple extra seconds, they want to hold the door for you. They want to engage. They want to see how you're doing. And I just wish we didn't get such a bad rap, because we're not mean, we're not lazy, we're not ghetto. We just are full of a lot of love. So let me know what you think, and let me know what your experience has been anytime that you go back to your neighborhood or to visit someone, because I know I can't be the only one that feels like this.
The idea that living in a project automatically means it's ghetto is a tired stereotype. People hear projects and immediately assume crime, poverty, and struggle. I get it, because it's easily affordable, it's cheap, and we have different kind of human beings living there. But in reality, not everyone living there fits that narrative. In the project, some people are just living their lives, minding their business, and making the best of what they have. Life does have its up and down. In the society we live in, people are judged based on so many things. People are also judged based on where they live, their postcode, their zip code, the type of school they attend, people they associate with, how they dress. The truth of the matter here is this: some people living in the high-class neighborhood doing the absolute most. They are also committing crime, scamming people in suits, and being messy behind closed doors. But the society doesn't label that as ghetto.
How the government created the ghetto. In the 1920s, Black people were kind of scattered everywhere. They weren't particularly segregated until after the Great Migration. The response of the government was to try to contain them in their own neighborhoods. So after slavery, African Americans were not allowed to live in white suburban neighborhoods, and they were basically forced to live in urban housing projects, which were older, less maintained properties. To keep Black people further under, they then placed lots and lots of police surveillance in these areas. In return, they were able to criminalize Black people and send them to prison.
Not to mention, they gave them unhealthy food options nearby, planted drugs in these areas, and the list goes on. A long list. In 1933, the government started redlining. Basically, they outlined black areas in red and labeled them as high risk and dangerous. This indicated to the appraisers that it was too risky to give mortgages to these areas. In return, the banks did not give out loans to homes in these areas. And if they did, people of color were given limited options. Instead of a conventional loan, they were given special loans with higher interest or higher fees, which would basically set them up for failure. Then, the Federal Housing Administration began a program to suburbanize all the white neighborhoods. But the catch was, the only way they could get the funding to do this was to commit to never let an African American buy a home. With the government's support, this created the greatest growth of the middle class in the history of the world for white people. By 1940, 42% of white families owned their own home. With this leverage, it allowed middle-class white people to build wealth. They could then use this wealth to send their kids to college, give the wealth to their kids, and in return, the kids could get their own homes. It was a chain effect. What happened at the same time was people of color were discriminated against and prevented from taking the same opportunities. This created a cycle of poverty, which has still been hard to break to this day. Like I said, chain effect. Each time the government got rid of an institutional constraint in this country, they replaced it with another one. First it was slavery, then Jim Crow, then redlining. Decades of housing discrimination has created an unfair financial wealth gap between white and black families. This is in part why President Biden has issued an executive order to fix the historical wrongs that black people have faced with housing and home ownership.
Today, I'm directing the Department of Housing and Urban Affairs and Urban Development to redress the historical racism in federal housing policies.
While this is a step in the right direction, there is a lot that still needs to be done.
The point of this talk is to let you know that it's important for you to live your life for yourself. I understand how living in project can be, living in the hood can be. I know some projects are as good as ghetto, let's be honest. While some projects are decent, you get what I mean, depending on the people living there. So regardless of where you're situated, do not let what people think about your environment define you. If the project is what you can afford, go for it. And also, it's important for you to know what to expect depending on where your own project housing is situated. I'm not in any way dismissing the fact that projects can be ghetto. Some of the houses are debilitated, worn out because of poor maintenance, poor management. I had to make this video to let people that have no idea of what it might be like or look like living in project looks like. I understand that this is just a subset and it does not represent all the project housing out there. It just gives a level of representation of how some project housing can be and what to expect, if you get what I mean. Remember, this might not apply to everyone.